Guys, remember last time we recorded a podcast and we talked about how we had been gone for 4 or 5 or maybe 6 weeks. I don't know what it was. Now we were back on track. Everything was going to be fine. We lied. It's now been another, I don't even know how long since that last podcast, but definitely more than 2 weeks. So for the 2 or 3 of you who are still listening, we're back. Possibly on schedule, but who knows? I'm not making any promises. If you need new life insurance or life insurance at all, go to healthiq.com/catalyst and you can do a little quiz thing, see if you're eligible. They will get you better life insurance rates for being a healthy weightlifter person. Kind of like you get safe driver discounts for car insurance. If you're really good at driving, you pay less. Just like with this, if you're really good at not dying, you pay less. So go check them out, healthiq.com/catalyst. Ursula, let's hear about those seminars you've got coming up.
Well, if I don't die, I mean,
yeah. Seriously, Ursula's been at death's door for the past month. That's been part of the problem.
Yeah, I caught the flu, and I mean, it's not funny actually, because our dear friend Mario Martinez, rest in peace, he actually did pass from the flu, and it's been really bad this season. I don't think it's but I had it for a couple of weeks, and Greg kept calling me and texting me and was like, are you ready to go? And I was like, well,
nope.
We could try, but I don't think it's going to be too good.
Yeah, but well, let's be honest. I didn't fight you too hard on that either.
No, you did not. You did not. But I'm fairly recovered. I still have some coughing, so you'll have to excuse me. But anyways, I'm humaning again, so I'm out and about and doing stuff. So I'm just basically coughing on the rest of the population. But I'm no longer. Yeah, I know. I'm no longer contagious. I did go teach a class, apparently contagious, not intentionally. But I am well enough to go and work, and so I have a couple of seminars on schedule, still on schedule. One's at Black Box in Fort Worth, February 24th through the 6th. I think it's the 24th. It's that Friday, whatever that Friday is. See, this is how disoriented I am. 23rd, 24th, and 25th. That's what it is. So 23rd to 25th at Black Box in Fort Worth. And then I have another one at USA Weightlifting in March 15th, 16th, 17th, I believe. So that's that weekend. But you can go to weightliftingwise.com, and there are links there to register. So one's in Fort Worth and one's in Houston in February and March. So if you're interested, 16th, 17th, 18th is the one in Houston. So they're Friday nights. They start usually around 6 p.m. We have a couple hours at night, and then we go full day Saturday and Sunday. Lots of information from working with beginners to intermediates to information about programming, and just learning a large variety of exercises for correcting technique and teaching proper technique, as well as correcting problems. And I mean, it's just chock full of information. And for 2 days, we're doing work with barbells. So
she mainly teaches the bend and snap, the hunch and punch. Like yeah.
Really important things, technical stuff.
Yeah.
But it's written for coaches, like it's a coach's course, but anyone can learn from it. And if you're as long as you've lifted for a while and you understand the basics, you'll be able to extract lots of information. I've had lots of people take it once and then say, I'm going to take it again. And I've had people take it twice and learn a lot both times. So consider it.
Consider it.
Consider it.
Everybody consider it.
Consider it if you're trying to learn more and become a better coach.
Or a better lifter, let's be honest. Learn. I do my seminars the same way. I present them as if I'm speaking to a room full of coaches, but I also preface it as saying, if you're an athlete and you don't have a coach, you are your own coach. And even if you do have your own coach, so much of the stuff you have to learn and understand yourself anyway. So it still benefits you to learn from a coach's perspective. If for no other reason, then you learn how to communicate with your coach better so that he or she can do a better job getting you better at weightlifting. So don't shy away from it because you don't coach people technically.
And it's a seminar course, so we have, just open Q&A the whole time. Like, you can ask any question at any time. It's not so rigid in its formation that you cannot ask a question about anything that's going on. And even if it's slightly off topic, I'll take it under consideration even at that point or for later in the course. And so I think that makes it a little bit different than a lot of the very structured courses that you go to that have like a specific itinerary that must get covered. Because I wrote the course to make sure that it's really about just understanding weightlifting as well as teaching the methodology that I use, and then also understanding the methodologies that a lot of other coaches in the country use, and explaining whatever differences that
explaining
exist
why yours is
them.
better.
No, explaining the differences in them, and so that you can understand why they're not really as different from each other as you may think they are, why they may cater to like one body type over another. And so that's, everybody kind of roots theirs in something slightly different, but it doesn't make one wrong or one right. There are some that are.
There are some that are wrong, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But yes, there are a hell of a lot more similarities than differences when you get down to it. Mm-hmm. Despite
and
what
explaining those.
Despite how disgruntled keyboard warriors all over the internet would have you believe.
Right.
Okay.
So we get to take it down to like a biomechanics level and explain what's similar and what's happening in the movement that makes them the same or different. But anyways,
same.
You'll have to come to the course.
But different. Okay, go to the course. Moving on. Let's see here. Sonia says, "Hey guys, great listening to your podcast. Thanks. What I am wondering is, do I, and then how do I, implement front squats in my program instead of back squats? I'm always in pain when I back squat, even just with 40 kilos. My issue is twist in the torso and my hips misalign when I do back squats. Thanks in advance, smiley face." Yeah, I mean, if you're at a point in your life where you cannot back squat without pain, certainly something needs to change. And even if it's just temporarily not doing back squats, then yes, you can do front squats instead. You can do things like, trap bar deadlift standing on a riser, which will basically simulate a pause squat, but, put the weight in a little bit different position, give you some variety from just doing front squats. So there's a few different things you can do there. But I would certainly say, don't just throw out the back squats and move on with your life. I would really try to figure out what is going on. Number one, out of curiosity. Number two, because something is clearly a problem and problems are meant to be fixed. And number three, if it's that much of a problem, I would honestly, personally be worried that eventually I was going to start having that problem in my front squat too, if that's all I was doing. So first and foremost, I would suggest, if you have the means, to go see some kind of physical therapist or a chiropractor who does manual therapy and who is well versed in sports, in particular barbell lifting, and try to diagnose what is going on and find ways to fix it. And if you absolutely cannot do that, or kind of in the meantime, I would definitely start doing regular unilateral work to try to get some balance between your two sides and hopefully get things naturally realigned and staying aligned. So, lunge variations, step up variations, things like, single leg RDLs, with dumbbells and or barbells, split squats, pretty much any unilateral exercise that will kind of force you to develop some more hip stability and some symmetry side to side in terms of that stability and that strength, and even mobility too. You may have some underlying limitation that you're not aware of because it's relatively minor, but it's enough to create this problem in this exact exercise. And it may be something simple enough where you do a bunch of unilateral stuff, you focus on your mobility, the stuff that back in the olden days we called stretching. Remember when we called it stretching and it worked fine?
Yeah.
And then, you may find that this stuff does clear up over time if you quit back squatting, so you're not continually aggravating it. But yeah, I would definitely try seeing a PT. Oh, one more thing before Ursula jumps in and gives you a better answer. I would try, before you abandon back squats right now, I would actually try doing pause back squats. And see if having that really controlled position in the bottom and being able to initiate that upward drive with kind of a more conscious effort to be balanced and be in the right position allows you to perform that movement without pain, because that might give you some more diagnostic information. And then beyond that, it's again another way to get some more squat variations in there that don't cause pain. All right, Ursula, school me.
I already knew your answer, lucky for me, so I could write other things. And everything Greg is saying, obviously, I agree with. And the number one thing is get to a PT. I would get to a physical therapist. I would send someone to a physical therapist. And of course, I'm a little bit of an abuser because I'm not a physical therapist. So I like to get their feedback and see where we can, if we can get a protocol that's going to fix it. To implement right away. In the meanwhile, if you can front squat, I would go ahead and keep front squatting a couple of times a week, which is normal to my programming anyways. We do front squats usually twice to one back squat, or the reverse depending on the needs of the athlete. And then we usually do a front squat in combination as well. I would try some things. Like I have a tendency to try to check the athlete and see what we can do. I would probably test, like, can you do a quarter squat without twisting? Can you go to a half squat without twisting? Like, where does the twisting begin and end? Like, where's the genesis of it? And so if I can use, you like that? You like that, Greg? Genesis, that was pretty good.
It was so amazing.
Greg's an English major. We have to practice our good English with Greg. So, and then Greg went all the way down to the pause. So I think those are just, maybe some precursors to the pauses to do a quarter or a half squat. I give my athletes squats with pauses at different heights anyways. So it may be slowing down the squat and just stopping at the point where you would normally twist. But of course, number one would be going to the physical therapist first. And once I got some feedback from a physical therapist, then I would start my little experiment phase. The unilateral work, the one-legged, like a step up or one-legged squats, I think those exercises you can start to incorporate and should be able to avoid that twisting. But if the physical therapist says that you're not ready for that, then I would leave that off. I think that's where my first instinct would take me, which Greg had already mentioned. And I think that was probably his first instinct too, because on his little list that he gave me, because he's giving me his answers now, which is nice. So I don't give him the same answers.
He's cheating off my test.
Yeah, he used to not give me his answers, and so I'd start scribbling down all my answers.
Eyes on your own work.
And then there would be his, and I would be like, damn it, now I'm just copying his, but I didn't have his. The other thing that I would try, and so I'm writing down my own answers now instead of copying from Greg, is maybe like a close grip overhead squat, because it's going to be very hard to twist in that. And if you're telling me you don't twist in a snatch, but you do twist in a back squat, I'd be curious to see what happens in an overhead squat. And that would just me and my little coach instinct wanting to see, again, trying to figure out why and where you twist from. Because if you don't twist in a snatch or a front squat, but you twist in a back squat, I would want to see if you can do like a power jerk plus overhead squat and not twist. And those might be something that you can incorporate as another squatting movement. And although it wouldn't be the same intensity as a back squat because the weight wouldn't be light, it would be another squatting movement that you could add in that would benefit you. Yeah. Greg had, and he didn't put these on his cheat sheet, but he had mentioned RDLs. And of course that's, assuming that there's some weakness in the back that's causing it. If we're putting in or posterior chain weakness that's causing it, I guess you mentioned what RDLs and something else.
Oh no, I wanted single leg RDLs.
Okay.
Like especially like a single leg with one dumbbell, like contralateral. Yeah. So if you're on left leg, you've got dumbbell on the right arm. Just looking for more of that hip stability and balance, not strength so much.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it could be, and you're looking at like the strength or weakness on one side.
Or just the control.
In general, the accessory work that you could add in, like king squats, good mornings, supplementary work that would be lighter, that might start strengthening overall. Obviously, you're going to have some sort of either, it kind of points to either a weakness or relative weakness on one side versus the other that's causing the twisting, or it could be a misalignment, as you had mentioned, causing it, or it could be a lack of activation on one side versus the other. So those are all real possibilities.
Which is what a PT is great for determining.
That's right. That's why we're all sending you to a PT first.
The way I look at it is that's definitely not our primary expertise, and so we could screw around with you for several months trying to figure out, and I'm probably going to use a shotgun approach and just throw everything at you and hope some of it works.
Just what I'm doing.
Yeah, but a PT, a good PT will be able to get down and figure out what the actual cause is in much less time. So it's a much more efficient use of your time, so you can get back to training, at full bore rather than screwing around. And that gives us
direction. And that would then give us direction as to what of these would be most useful.
And selfishly, that's how I learn a lot of stuff.
Absolutely. Right. That gives us, going forward information, and we can be better at doing our jobs.
Yeah.
The last thing I would say, potentially, post PT is, and I'm not a big fan of machines, and we don't usually have them, but coming back from the PT, maybe just for a control mechanism, back squatting in a Smith machine, which is going to really help you control how you're moving, and eliminate some of that imbalance if you're tending to move either fore and aft in one direction or laterally, because of the bar being fixed.
Yeah. Well, and if you don't have a Smith machine, if you have a crappy barbell and a power rack, you can do relatively light squats, basically sliding that bar down and up the power rack uprights. As long as you have stuff you don't mind scratching up, which we have a collection of bars that we use in the rack because they're already, they pieces of shit from the factory, so we don't really mind if the knurling gets worn down.
And I have a hack that you can pull your feet under instead of putting them out in front.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Cool. Aren't you fancy?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, Sonia, good luck. Who we got here? Lauren.
Lauren. That's my favorite name.
Really? Well, look at that, Lauren. What tips do you have for people training alone, no coach, and with very little support from family or friends? Get new family and friends. Bastards.
Adopt a new family.
Your friends don't support you. What kind of friends are they? Shit. No, but in all seriousness, because most of us actually have emotional attachment to friends, even when they're terrible for us. I mean, I don't personally. I don't give a fuck, but most people do. I'm more of a scorched earth approach kind of guy. I've gone, and I know, I'm sure Ursula has had the same experience. I've gone both ways. I've spent a lot of time training alone. I've spent time training with a team. I've spent time kind of training with one or two people. So I have a pretty broad range of experience there. And there are benefits to each of those things. I mean, there are times when I really enjoy and prefer training alone. So you kind of want to find the benefits of that and exploit that as much as possible, enjoy that as much as possible, and then try to make up for the things, the drawbacks of training alone. So, I mean, just really simple things like having music that keeps you motivated. And like I wrote an article a while back that was basically like, don't get too reliant on music and training because it's just kind of turning you into a brat. Like, well, I can't possibly train in this environment. The music isn't perfect. It's not loud enough. It's the wrong station, whatever. That's a problem. You don't want to be like that. But there's certainly nothing wrong with, playing music that keeps you in a, kind of a positive mood, keeps you energetic, because that's the main thing. I think for most people, training alone is you kind of lose that enthusiasm to a large degree, or maybe you're excited to get out there and get started, but then you kind of start warming up and you realize like, oh man, I'm kind of tired. I didn't really sleep that well last night. And, I ran out of pre-workout and fuck, I got to lift really heavy. There's no way I can do this. And if you have music that is for you, energizing and motivating, that's going to go a long way to kind of keep you moving rather than allowing you to sit down and wind down and then not be able to kind of get going again. Something else I've always really liked when I'm training alone is we have a little TV in the corner of the gym, and I have all of Randy Strawson's old Iron Mind videos burned onto this little Mac Mini, so I can watch all these lifting videos. And that's my favorite era of weightlifting is basically the 90s. It's got all my favorite guys like Vanev and Botev and Skirbathis and all these guys. So that's kind of like having, you have the sounds of weightlifting, you have lifters that maybe you admire or you want to emulate, or who get you pumped up about weightlifting because of whatever particular traits they have. Like I like watching Vanev lift because he's probably the most aggressive weightlifter you'll ever see in your life. Like it looks like he's gonna fucking murder every single person in the gym, with every lift he does. So that's pretty energizing. And that Iron Mind video where Dr. Strawson's in the training hall in Sofia and he's going after like a 210 clean and jerk. I think he tries it like 8 times and keeps missing the jerk, but he just keeps like going after that lift like a lunatic, and it's the greatest thing ever. There's a video on YouTube of him at I think it's at, I don't remember if it's at a Europeans or a World Championship, where he comes off the stage after his 3rd clean and jerk, and he's so excited, and he's walking down the little, like the plywood hallway that they've constructed to connect the competition platform to the warm-up room, and he just straight up headbutts a door open on his way back, just by way of celebration, because of course that's perfectly reasonable. And then my final suggestion would be, well, my final for now at least, Ursula will probably remind me of something, would be to try to find some kind of group, in your case, likely online, that you can be accountable to some way, whether it's on a forum. Do they still have forums on the internet, or is that kind of an old thing? A Facebook group.
You're asking an old person.
People.
Yeah.
do they have forums on typewriters, Ursula?
I don't know.
Sure. Like a Facebook group or a bunch of people on Instagram that you follow that you can communicate with regularly and kind of say, here's what I did today. What do you guys think? Or even, for example, I end up texting my workouts to my friend and one of the other coaches for Catalyst, Mike Gray, like, hey, here's what I did today. And usually you know, for me, I don't know how to describe it exactly, but it's just kind of nice to like have someone know what you're up to. And feel like someone's paying attention.
It's just accountability.
Yeah, exactly. Because he'll call me a total bitch if I'm not training well, or you know, he'll do something to encourage me like that. And so that having, even if it's just one person, you know, it's not a physical training partner, but someone who you are invested in their training and they're invested in your training. It can't be one unidirectional. Like you have to pay attention to what they're doing too. You can't just expect them to like pat you on the back every day for free. I don't know, Ursula, what else?
Have I ever told you there's a really sad and pathetic story about when I was getting ready for the 92 Worlds and I had to do my last heavy workout?
I don't think so, but I would like to hear it.
I was training alone in my garage. I trained a lot initially when I started training because there were very few girls training, and
they're called women, Ursula.
I was a girl. I was like 19.
Okay.
There were very few women training for the world or for.
Well, don't let a man tell you how to call yourself.
I was girl, but there were other women, I suppose. But I remember it was like doing my last heavy lifts. It was like a Sunday, so the gym wasn't open. And even in the gym, like at that time, Mark Henry was around, but there weren't very many women in the gym. They kind of started a little weightlifting team at the school, but I didn't really hang out with the women very much because they had their own kind of team, because they had a different coach. I don't know, but I was in my garage by myself, and I kind of just did my own thing. And I had to go up to my openers, and they were just feeling sluggish and really heavy, mostly because I was there by myself, and I had my little radio on, which was, you know, like a little 1988 radio. It was just like
it was one of those big console radios. You were listening to Lone Ranger.
No. It was like really small. I didn't even have a big one. Like the big one we had in the gym. We used to have to buy those like every few months because Mark would crush them. So he would miss lifts. Anyways, and
maybe don't put the radio under Mark's platform.
We didn't. He would move platforms with his weights. He was. I don't know. You remember Mark's lifting? He would take a few steps to the left a lot. So we I remember looking out onto the street. And right as I was standing at the bar, I was like at 90, and for clean and jerk, obviously I wasn't snatching 90, and I was at 56. And there was a little boy riding his bike across the street, and I wanted so bad. He was probably about 10. And I was like, hey, you know, in my head, I was like, hey, little boy, come watch this. Like, I just wanted him to come and sit and watch, like, anybody.
Yeah.
I didn't care, just anybody, just come watch this. Like, I had zero motivation. Sometimes just, like, literally being in a place where there are just other people has some impact.
Yeah.
So I think my biggest suggestion. So at the school, even though when I was training, there weren't necessarily other weightlifters, there were like the Aikido people doing Aikido in front of me, or the fencing people doing fencing in front of me. And as much as we would bitch about them like moving in front of us, the fact that there were other people in the room actually made a difference. And they weren't even watching us. Like sometimes they would stop when they would rest and they would watch us. They had no idea what we were doing. But the fact that there were just other people in the room was motivating. The last time I was getting ready for Masters Nationals, whenever that was like a few years ago, I would get one of the guys that owned the gym that I was in, didn't really care about weightlifting too much. But, I mean, they had a weightlifting space, and I was in, I had my gym in their gym, so I guess they cared about it some. I would get one of them, Kyle Teague was one of the guys that owned the gym. I would get him to come and watch my lifts. He would be sitting in the front, hanging out, and I'd be like, Kyle, scream to the front, and he would come in the back, and he would just sit there and watch me lift because it was late at night, and the gym was, just like, and he would just go back there and cheer or whatever and watch a few of my lifts, and it made a difference. Sometimes just getting someone to be a spectator I think is hopeful. So, I mean, a husband, friend, and somebody that if you can get to come in and help. For me, that makes a difference.
Yeah.
And you see people train with their animals, and I always think don't drop the bar on your animal. But I think sometimes that's why people bring their dogs in there, because it's just another being that you're like, they're watching me. Somebody's watching you. I make my athletes train often without music, like in the garage. Now that we're training in the garage, yesterday I actually turned on some music, but you could barely hear it because it was from the TV in the living room, and we had the garage door open, so you could kind of hear it. But I've made them train mostly without music in the garage lately. I don't like dependency on music, like we have to have music. We don't, because I don't have a TV anywhere. We don't do videos, but I've been in a lot of gyms where and I think it's the same thing. I think it's feeling like there's somebody else there. I do like the accountability thing. It's the same thing. I think if you're videotaping yourself, somebody else is watching. Even if they're not watching at that moment, somebody else is going to see that. And so it just makes you do things a little better.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get some sort of a feedback. I've thought a lot what you were saying about a Facebook group. We have a Facebook group, different groups for different teams that groups that I run. Like we have like a JV team, and then we have our Texas Barbell team. And so we have different closed groups. But the one thing is we actually never post videos because we actually meet and train together. Initially, the men's team was supposed to post videos, but every time somebody posted a video, the other guys were just complete assholes to them. They would just like write shit about each other.
Sounds like a great team.
Yeah, I know, right? So nobody wanted to post a fucking video. Way to fuck that up, guys. And so people stopped posting videos.
Oh my God.
So I know. Well, that's what happens with the men's team. But I'm thinking I'm going to create another one for just like clients, for them to post, for me to be able to get feedback. Because what I do otherwise is I do it, like they send them to me on my phone. And the one thing I do like is, like if you have an Instagram and you do post your videos on Instagram, please wear clothes. And also, because it makes it a lot easier to watch if we can focus on the lift and not parts falling out. But like tagging someone that you want to see your video. I have people tag me sometimes, and if I'm tagged and it pops up, I'll actually watch the video. So like knowing that somebody you want to watch the video watches your video, I think can be kind of motivational.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think now with social media, you have lots of ways between Facebook groups and Instagram videos. I mean, I think that's a good way to use Instagram in a way that is actually beneficial, other than just,
look at me.
Yeah, gratuitous tit shots. And, I mean, if that's what you want to use it for, more power to you, but I'm just saying. And if you're just doing gratuitous tit shots, don't tag me, please. I'm going to get a bunch of tags now. But, I mean, if you want people to look at your videos and knowing that you have someone that is watching, I think helps. I don't know what to say about your friends and family. It's unfortunate that you don't get support from them. I would try to change that situation. One, I would start making more friends. I'd start making friends with a community of lifters, for sure. Like when you go to weightlifting meets, start exchanging information with people at the meets that live closer to you, and periodically go train with them. Just because you're not part of a specific gym doesn't mean you can't go and train with people from that gym. We, in the different gyms that I've owned or I had my gym, located in, co-located in, we've invited members of other gyms from all over the state to come train with us, and we've gone to their gyms and trained with them. We build a weightlifting community like throughout Central Texas, and even from Houston and Dallas, we have different gyms that we go and train with, and we'll take up a few of our lifters and vice versa. Like you should have an extension besides, feeling like you're alone. In weightlifting, you should never feel like you're alone. There are so many weightlifters nowadays. Back in the 90s when I started lifting, the late 80s when I started lifting, it certainly was a pretty, solitary world because there weren't very many lifters. And the ones that were around, we did, try to stay in touch and stay close, even though we were across the country from each other very often. Hopefully your family will come around. Invite them to weightlifting meets, and if they don't show up, keep inviting them. Maybe they'll change their tune and start to support you a little bit more. I think it's important for them to realize that this is something that you're passionate about, and to be part of it. They'll probably end up enjoying it. You never know. But I think that's it, Lauren. And I do like your name. It is one of my favorite names.
Well, there you go.
The family can't be all bad. They picked a great name.
Well, maybe she changed it when she turned 18. We don't know. I'm not going to give them too much credit since they don't support her. Okay.
I think they just may not know what it is yet.
Well,
I know when I first started lifting, my dad, I'm Hispanic, right? So my dad was like, and he was very open, like, my mom worked and full time and helped support the family. And so we were traditional, but non-traditional in a lot of ways. And, but he still was like, and I had been lifting weights since I was 14, but he was still like, oh no, my daughter's going to be a weightlifter. She's going to look like a man and all that. Like, real worried about it. And I was like, but I was so stubborn. I was like, oh, well, I don't care if you like it. This is what I'm going to do. And, but he ended up being very, very proud of what I was doing, and would go to the weightlifting meets and when he could, and supported me. And he has Parkinson's now and Alzheimer's, but through his 60s, he was very, very proud of me. So you never know. People change.
Sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's figure Ray's dilemma out here. Ray says, should athletes be allowed to cue other athletes, whether or not a coach is present? Sometimes athletes mistake cueing for encouragement. Is this being a good teammate or being a side coach? Ursula, why don't you jump in on this one first? You already see.
Yeah, I noticed you didn't have any answers here.
Oh, I didn't? I must have written that after I sent you the thing, because I'm looking at it right now.
Oh.
Got you on that one.
So, yeah, no, well, I think cheering and encouraging on your teammates is good. I think cueing other athletes when the coach is right there you should wait for the coach to cue them. I think that's the job of the coach. Now, if the coach is across the room doing something else, and as long as whatever you're telling the athlete is consistent with what you have heard the coach tell the athlete, it's fine. But I do think that there can be a problem with particular athletes taking it upon themselves to consistently step in and try to become like an assistant or side coach without being given that type of authority by the head coach. And I think it should be very clear who the assistant coaches are in a group, because the assistant coaches are given the proper tools by the head coach to follow whatever methodology the head coach wants followed. And if you have athletes in the group that start to give their own advice and it's contrary to the methodology the head coach is espousing, it can become confusing for athletes in the group. So I think where there is consistency it's fine. And where the head coach is unavailable, it's fine. And where there is an acknowledgement that this is not this is a continuation of what would be normal for the head coach to espouse, then you're all on the same track. That's fine. What I don't like is when, or what I think is overstepping, is let's say when, let's look at you're 3 platforms down and the coach is busy and you're training with your partner, and your partner all of a sudden tries to change your setup position. And that has not been anything that's been discussed with your coach. And all of a sudden, that goes beyond cueing. That's not drive with your legs more off the floor. That's not, keep the bar closer as you're standing. That's not finish your extension. That's not turn over more aggressively. That's not just some sort of a cue. That is an actual change in a position that's going to have larger, bigger effects in how someone moves. Now, if the person is setting up with the hips higher than they normally do, they may point out your hips were higher than you normally set up. But if they were where they normally set up and you're like, I don't think that setup's right, you should start with your hips lower. And it's an actual deviation from what the coach has taught them, then I think you've overstepped. Because now you're basically deciding on your own to make technical changes where the coach has not authorized them.
Unauthorized changes.
And that's not cueing. That's really trying to be a side coach.
Yeah.
I think anything like that should be cleared with the head coach first. Being a good teammate would be going to the head coach and asking, am I observing this correctly? Is this, then you're learning, and the coach can tell you why that's the setup. And it may be that you're observing something. Maybe they're starting to drift, maybe over time, in that session or in a couple of sessions, the hips have been starting to drift up and they do need to set them back down. And it's just gotten away from the coach. That sometimes happens. But trying to do some, major technical change or changing, making some suggestion for some major change or something that the coach is not authorized, I think is when you start to move into the realm of you trying to be a side coach. I do think, cheering, encouraging, giving feedback that is consistent with what the coach would direct is absolutely fine and should be encouraged. And that's why I think it's important for everyone in the room to have been coached, taught, coached, and understand the way that the coach does things with each of the athletes. And you don't know from athlete to athlete necessarily why that athlete is doing something different than you. And it might not be your business to try to change things for that athlete. So you shouldn't try. I think it's fair to go ask the coach why they do something differently, but I don't think it's necessarily your job to try to step in and make changes. I make all of my athletes go through, and I'm sure you do too, go through the courses that you teach so that they understand why you do things the way you do.
No, I don't make them. I just figure that if they're not interested, that's their problem. I can't force them to want to be really good weightlifters.
I guess I shouldn't say I make them. They all ask to come and do the courses.
Yeah. I don't know that I really have much to add to that because I agree with everything you said. I mean, definitely the obviously the number one problem is other athletes giving contradictory cues to the coach's athletes. That is a huge problem. And number one, it's disrespectful to the coach. But number two, you're not helping the other athlete. You're creating confusion in that athlete. I mean, I guess there is a small chance that you're seeing something the coach is not. But I would not, as another athlete, I would certainly not be confident that that was the case. And like Ursula said, if you're seeing something consistently in one of your teammates and you're thinking, wow, this is a problem, I really think this needs to be fixed, go to the coach and say, hey, you know, I don't want to tell you how to do your job, but I know you're busy. Maybe you just haven't noticed this, but so-and-so is doing this. And I'm wondering, like, if that's okay. And that coach, if they haven't noticed, will probably be grateful that you've brought it to their attention. Because, you know, a lot of times coaches, like in our old gym, I was watching anywhere from like 8 to 15 people at a time, and you can't see every single thing. And like Ursula said, you know, there are cases where an athlete is making these really subtle changes over time, and you may not notice it until it's gone on for a while. Whereas an athlete who's sharing a platform with that lifter every single day may notice it right away and bring that to your attention. That's fine. You know, thank you. We'll address that. You know, it's presumptuous to say like, oh, well, you know, I went on YouTube last night and I saw, you know, some dipshit over here from whatever, you know, Barbell Sports Performance, fucking Magic Voodoo Weightlifting Club had to say about this, and so now I'm going to go in and tell all my teammates to change what they're doing. And I think that's what's happening more and more these days, is that, you know, everyone's curious, they want to learn more, and they haven't quite developed that information filter yet, and they're not quite sure how to kind of validate information quite as well as a coach who's maybe been doing it, you know, as long as, say, Ursula has, and who has that experience to be able to say instantly, no, that's nonsense, ignore it, or yeah, that's interesting, maybe we'll look into that and talk about it. And so they're just kind of like spouting off whatever the newest thing they've heard is. And for a lifter who is really focused on being as good as possible and making progress over time, they need consistency. They need to have a coach who is giving them consistent messaging and programming and things like that. And if they're changing, you know, their starting position, or if they're changing the timing in their pull or their position later in the pull, you know, whatever the case is, they're changing that stuff week to week because they heard something new from one of their teammates. You know, they're going to end up spinning their wheels for a long time and making much less progress than they could. So don't think that you're doing these lifters a favor by being in their ear with contradictory or new information, and just be you know, respectful both to the coach and to the lifter, and you know, go that correct route and go through the coach and ask your coach individually, hey, are you okay with me cueing? You know, if you're not paying attention, you know, can I give these athletes reminders of the same stuff you're telling them? Because if your lifters are around each other long enough, they're going to hear what the coach is saying to each lifter. Usually, you know, hopefully they're paying some amount of attention. And so they can kind of reiterate those things for those lifters who need to hear it over and over and over again. And if they're not comfortable with that, they're not paying attention, and you as a coach know that, like, this guy never watches other lifters, he doesn't pay attention to what I'm saying or why, you know, he's just going to start saying, you know, random cues that he's kind of heard floating around in the gym, then say, yeah, you know, I'd prefer if you didn't really give them technical cues, you know, just like Ursula said, kind of give them encouragement, or kind of more general things like be aggressive or be confident, you know, things like that, where that's not
stay tight.
Right. No one's, you're not going to screw anyone up by saying, hey, be really confident when you approach this lift. Like, oh, fuck, I was going to try to be as unconfident as possible. Now I'm confused. And that way you can kind of just be safe and not be stepping on anyone's toes. And as a coach, you know, teach your athletes what your expectations are, what's okay with you, what's not okay with you. And when you see something that's not okay with you, you've got to, you know, stomp it out as quickly as possible, because it gets really awkward and weird if you wait 6 months and then have to tell someone, hey, that thing you've been doing every day for the last 6 months, I don't like it. Like, well, what have you been doing the last 6 months? Why haven't you said anything? So
And in that situation, the role of the coach should direct you.
Yeah.
Like an athlete that is overstepping boundaries has to be addressed very, sooner rather than later by the coach. So, I mean, that kind of a question should be answered in any setting very quickly by the coach's reaction to that athlete. It shouldn't linger. So in cases where I've had coaches that are, or athletes that are trying to coach prematurely and are saying or doing things that are contrary to what we're doing, they just don't, they get a little chat really quickly. Like, look, you're here to be an athlete. Why don't you learn how to lift first before you try to teach other people what to do? Or, you're here to be coached. We have coaches. And let the coaches do their job, and you focus on being a good teammate and lifting. That's the luxury of just being an athlete. When it's, when it's your turn to coach, you'll coach. And so, and there's something great about being able to just be an athlete that you don't have to coach.
Seriously,
now, if you want to become a coach, then you might say something to the coach and say, hey, I'd like to help coach. That's going to be a different role. You're not going to be training alongside the athletes when you coach. You're going to get pulled out. You're going to be taught how to coach, and then you're going to be coaching.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's what came to mind in that last little bit, is that if that is your goal to become a coach, then you do need to communicate that with your coach, so he or she can treat you accordingly.
Uh-huh.
Don't assume that they know what's on your mind. And it would be really silly to piss off your coach by trying to coach other athletes when you could have just said, hey, I really want to get in transition into coaching. I want you to mentor me, whatever. And that coach would more than likely be 100% fine with that. But, give them the opportunity to do it the way they feel is best, rather than forcing them to continue to correct what you're doing or stop you from doing things improperly. Okay, let's wrap this thing up with Cassie. Hi, Ursula / Greg. That makes it sound like she's not addressing the two of us. She's addressing one or the other.
Whoever
to whom it may concern. First, want to say that I love your podcast. I listen for the banter and the expert advice religiously, in that order. I was definitely one of the 3 that panicked over Christmas season when the podcast wasn't released. Sorry, Cassie, we did it to you again. My question should outline from the start that I'm a CrossFitter, so maybe asking a very basic question, but I'd greatly appreciate your insight, as I am very interested in understanding and developing proper technique in Olympic lifting movements. I have noticed that my setup for the snatch and clean for the first pull is quite different when I intend to power snatch or clean, as opposed to when I intend to full snatch or clean. My butt is generally much higher in the power movement. Is this normal, or should the setup for the power variation mimic the full? I ask as I have just started working through an Oli cycle, courtesy of Catalyst, with intent to compete locally, and I'm very focused on honing in technique and understanding the purpose of different exercises and variations of movements. Appreciate your advice on this. This is a really easy answer here.
Can I say something
yes.
first? Because mine's short.
Yes.
First, Cassie, I did not roll my eyes when you said you were a CrossFitter.
I know. I didn't even read that part because I'm sick of people assuming. No, I intentionally didn't read it because I'm tired of people assuming that we're shit talking CrossFit. Have we ever even said anything negative about a CrossFitter on this show? I feel like we've given lots of good advice to CrossFitters.
Not with the mic's on.
Am I? Don't paint me with your brush.
No, I mean, half of my clients are former CrossFitters.
Yeah, settle down,
or
Cassie.
Still CrossFitters for that matter. I would do CrossFit, but I just suck at it. And I just can't get myself to do things that I'm not good at.
Yeah, God forbid you work on and practice things and get better at them.
No, my shoulders would pop out of their socket. But This is an easy one, Cassie. Your setup has to be the same for both. And your hips need to be lower, like you set up for your snatch and clean and jerk. They shouldn't go higher for your power snatches. And it makes you just wonder, is she doing that because maybe for reps or something? But the setup should be the same.
Yeah, easy. The only difference between a power snatch and a snatch should be the level at which you receive it.
I put right here, final height and receiving height.
Yeah. So don't complicate it. And just to expand on that, any pulling related exercise that you do specifically for the snatch or clean, other than like an RDL or a stiff-legged deadlift, should be done with the exact same pulling posture. All of them. Snatch, power snatch, snatch pull, snatch deadlift, anything like that should be that same pulling posture. So there you go. There's your answer for all the next exercises you're looking into.
Yeah, so when you're going to do, a weightlifting program, and I'm assuming as I'm guessing you would as well, that because just they do so many reps, and when they start doing reps of stuff, you'll see them keep their hips high just to not spend the time setting their hips back down, that they'll start doing snatches and or power snatches with a high hip.
Yeah.
And but that's not correct for because there's no leg drive on that. You're basically doing an RDL into a snatch or a power snatch.
Yeah. I think we've talked about that previously too, is that you want to distinguish as a CrossFitter, the lifts that you're doing strictly, to improve the snatch and the clean and jerk versus doing snatch, clean and jerk variations within, a Metcon, and your technique's probably going to vary a little bit. And that's one of the big ways, like Ursula said, is it's easier to cycle a bunch of reps quickly if you keep your hips higher. It's, it's a much simpler movement.
You just pull out all your leg drive though, so you're going to limit what you can actually lift. So for lower
but if you just have
reps,
to lift it like a billion times and
it's lighter weight, fine. Then it's one thing. Yeah. But no, Cassie, you're going to have to lower your hips for your power snatches and snatches to the same height and make sure they mimic each other. Like Greg said, the only difference between your snatch and your power snatch should be the height to which you pull it and the height to which you receive it. So obviously power snatch being higher and higher final height and higher receiving height. Other than that, the pull should look the same from start position and the S-curve. So,
and that's that.
Period.
Yes. All right, guys. If you are super psyched that we're back and we haven't just died or retired, and you trust us, yeah, then please go leave a review on iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher or we're on iHeartRadio now. So I don't even really know what that is, but apparently other people listen to it. So any of the platforms that you choose to enjoy this podcast on, we would appreciate a good review. We won't appreciate a bad review. Let's just make that clear. Although, you're adults, you're free to do those. We will resent you forever for it, but
no big deal.
Just, fair warning. We're not going to answer your question. Not that we would know who you were, most likely. But you'd be surprised the length that resentment will cause someone to go. Okay. We'll hopefully talk to you in 2 weeks.
Investigatory capabilities.
Yeah. We'll hopefully talk to you in 2 weeks, but no guarantees because this is the Weightlifting Life.
I'm going to Iran.
Shit. Damn it, Ursula. Can you stay home for more than 72 hours at a time?
I'm not going in 2 weeks. I'm going in 3 weeks. I'm going to Colorado Springs next weekend to go see Courtney and Colin. Somebody go ahead and say I'm name dropping.
Okay. Well, we'll figure out a way to get another one of these recorded in time, I'm sure.
Oh no.
I'm not sure, but we'll try.
We'll get one. We'll do one.
All right, guys. It's been fun. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye, everybody.